Hello and welcome back. Today I'm returning to Zach and other low elo chess bots, and in this video I'm going to see if Martin, the 250 elo bot who before the new chess bots were introduced was the weakest bot on the site, can go 5-0 against the new chess bots. And the first game is against Zach. And in each of these games, I flipped a coin to determine who got the white pieces. If the coin landed on heads, Martin got white. If it landed on tails, Martin got black. And the first game had Martin getting the black pieces and Zach taking white. Zach starts with what Stockfish considers the worst first move on the board, pawn to g4. Martin plays b6, which doesn't do a lot, but maybe the bishop will come out to b7. I'm not going to commentate every move though, because most of them do nothing, make little to no sense, and I don't want this video to drag on too long. But it is Martin who makes the first blunder on move 6, throwing away a bishop. Zach doesn't take it. Martin blunders it again. Zach doesn't take it, but it doesn't really matter because that bishop is actually trapped anyway. Now Martin throws away another bishop. White doesn't take either of them, and the bishops are still hanging. Finally, one gets taken, or rather, one takes the white bishop. White definitely needs to take back either right now or after one of these pawn captures that attacks the queen. But instead, white plays king to e1. Sometimes I wonder if Zach is just a random move generator, but he can't make moves that take the queen or checkmate. Either way, Martin doesn't take the hanging rook. Zach doesn't take the hanging bishop. And now Martin takes the rook and saves this bishop, only to blunder it again. But the wild move bishop takes c3 ends up working out because Zach plays pawn to h3 instead of taking the bishop, and now Martin wins the queen. And then Martin blunders it right back. It feels like in all of these games, both bots were trying to lose, and maybe Martin is programmed to play worse if it's winning. That's what it feels like. There's a lot of shuffling that I'm not going to commentate. Martin blunders a bishop here though, and he's still winning here, but after playing a do-nothing move, his advantage is pretty much gone. Knight to d3, defending the c5 pawn is what Stockfish recommends, but instead Zach just blunders a knight in one move. It's not taken. Now Martin has blundered a rook, which isn't taken, and now Martin takes the knight. So he is completely winning again, and he picks up a knight, only to lose his rook yet again, but he is still completely winning. Pawn to g4, and this is now a protected passed pawn, meaning that there are no white pawns that can stop it on any of these three ranks, and protected meaning there is another pawn defending it. And now Zach loses a rook, and a pawn, and a bishop. And it's mate in6 for Martin, but of course he's not going to find it. He's just going to shuffle his pieces around. He loses a pawn. Now this pawn is getting kind of close to promotion, but it's not really a threat now because this square is defended and the king can come over and stop it if need be. Martin pushes one of his pawns, losing another. in the process. But now knight back to g7 blockades the white pawn. But the pawn moves forward anyway, and Martin plays knight to c6, allowing promotion. And despite Zach's new queen, Martin is still completely winning, believe it or not. But after king to f5, he has lost his advantage, and the game is equal, according to Stockfish, if and only if white plays queen to d5 check. But white plays queen to f8, and now knight f6 is needed, but it doesn't happen, and now it is a draw again, although Martin is better. But after queen to d6, knight f6, shielding the king, is the winning move for Martin. But he doesn't play it, he grabs a pawn, and now this knight can be captured if there's a fork played. Queen e7 is one of many moves that draw for Zach. King g6, and after the queen heads over to the corner where she is pretty much inactive, it's winning again for Martin, and Martin actually plays the top engine move, knight takes b3. Zach grabs a pawn. Martin finally plays knight f6. The shuffling continues until Martin blunders a rook to queen takes d3 check. But it doesn't happen. White plays queen to c6. Martin takes. He is guaranteed at least a draw. White grabs a knight. And of course Martin should be pushing this pawn. But he doesn't do that for a long time. He loses a knight. And apparently losing the knight gave Martin the wake-up call to start pushing the d-pawn. And he makes a queen. And he starts shuffling again. But eventually, Zach is in a position where Martin can mate him in one move, and Martin is programmed not to miss checkmate in one, so he plays checkmate in one with rook h1 checkmate, and in 86 moves, Martin defeats Zach. He is now 1-0, 1 down, 4 to go, and for the second game, he gets the white pieces against the June bot. Martin starts with d4 and June replies with d5, a surprisingly normal opening for two bots with such low ratings. But the opening quickly deteriorates into nonsense. Martin manages to blunder a queen as early as move 7, which June doesn't even take. Then he blunders it again, and again, and now it's just a queen trade, and June blunders a bishop, and of course white is completely winning because he is up a bishop and has more activity than June. And there's a lot of shuffling here. June grabs a pawn back but blunders to the bishop. Martin doesn't even take the bishop. June goes back, saving the bishop, and then June loses a rook two different ways. Martin takes it, and then June loses a bishop, except she doesn't because Martin doesn't take. Still doesn't take. It feels like, up until this point, it felt like Martin was playing drawback chess, where his drawback was he couldn't take bishops. Or he couldn't take the light squared bishop, rather. But he finally captures it, blunders a knight, it gets taken. I have a feeling he's going to blunder this bishop soon. And shockingly, June plays the top engine move here. Maybe. It's basically a tie as to which move is the best according to Stockfish. But knight f5 is played, and apparently grabbing that free pawn is wrong. I would have played that too. Knight e3 is the top move of Stockfish, But rook e2 is what's played in the game. That hangs a rook two different ways, and Martin takes it. Then he blunders a bishop for good measure. It gets taken. Oh, and he blunders a rook as well. And here, even though Martin has a rook for a knight, Black's extra pawns make this position marginally winning for Black if Black takes the rook. But Black doesn't take the rook, and Martin saves it and blunders the rook again. In this position, you have a 50-50 chance of taking the rook if you're playing a random move. Jun doesn't take the rook, but after a4, Jun finally does take the rook. Now, to get any real chances of winning, White probably needs to play pawn to a5. Instead, Martin simply blunders a rook, and now it's completely lost, but c5 is played by Jun. Martin plays rook takes c5 and is right back in the game, and not only that, Jun needs to play pawn takes pawn to stay in the game. Instead, she plays g5 and just loses. But after rook d5 check, Jun is completely winning because there is a completely free rook on the board. Martin here was determined to lose his rook. He blunders it 2 moves in a row, 3 moves in a row, 4 moves in a row, and then he comes to his senses, loses a pawn. He probably should have pushed the f pawn instead of the g pawn, but he grabs one back, grabs another pawn with his king, blunders the rook again, and now it's a draw. Jun doesn't take it, and now White is winning. Martin takes a knight, pushes his pawn, makes a queen. His endgame technique usually leaves a lot to be desired. Here he played surprisingly well. He found king to b3. Now the only legal move is h4, and it's made in one with queen to a6, or queen to d8, which is what Martin plays in the game. He is now 2-0 with 3 games left, and his next game is against Pepe, and Pepe gets the white pieces and starts with f4. Martin is a copycat, I guess. He plays f5. Martin gambits a pawn or just blunders it. I don't know if this is a thing. Like, f4, f5, knight h3 is probably not an opening that's been studied by a lot of chess players because it doesn't make any sense. e5 is not something that Stockfish likes, although it's not like a losing blunder or anything. And Pepe doesn't even take the pawn. Against Martin here, I would probably play e4 and hope Martin doesn't take the knight, and then I can play queen h5. Oh, that's exactly what happened in the game. And indeed, Martin plays h5 and blunders checkmate in 5 moves. Pepe just plays pawn to h3 instead of checking, and Martin takes the knight. And then Pepe blunders a bishop 4 different ways. Martin plays queen takes bishop. Now, only now does Pepe think to play queen to h5 check, and in this position, playing that move is just a Botez gambit. He gives away a full queen, Martin captures, and is completely winning. Blunders a knight. He's trying to let Pepe get back into the game, I think. Pepe blunders a rook. Martin doesn't take it, but he can still take it on the next move. Bishop c5 check. Not quite the top engine move, but it is another move that leads to a forced mate. d4 is played, and then bishop takes d4. One of the top engine moves. King f1. Queen takes rook here. And now Martin should only be a few moves away from finishing off Pepe, but instead of trying to convert the game, he just starts playing random nonsense. He is still completely winning. He has mate in 3 various different ways according to the engine. But instead of that, I guess he's just a really nice guy and wants Pepe to get back into the game, so he plays queen takes c1, giving away his queen, but of course he is still completely winning, because after rook takes queen he would have an 11-point material advantage. Rook takes queen does happen. b4 now. An en passant capture. I have a feeling that a real human player of Martin's skill level would not know that en passant was a thing. Martin gives away a rook. Pepe gives it right back. And we have a lot of mindless shuffling here. Martin blunders the bishop for a pawn. And Martin seems to have no regard for his pawns. He only has 2 left and they're both blockaded. This is not as easy to convert as you think if you are as bad at chess as Martin is. But now he has a g-pawn that is completely unstoppable. And guess what he does with it? That's right, absolutely nothing. Not only does he not push the g-pawn, he doesn't even prevent white from making a queen, which is the only way that white could get back into this game. But you know what Pepe does here? He makes a rook. Martin finally plays g2. I guess that was a wake-up call. And Pepe, I guess, is so desperate to stop the pawn promotion that he just gives away a rook. It does feel like something a beginner would do, maybe even something an advanced player would do, where they're like, oh my goodness, I gotta stop this pawn, and just forget that they can be captured, or it's like a desperation move, hoping their opponent will pre-move. But in this game, it's just the kind of blunder that these bots are programmed to make. King takes g8. White still has 1 pawn left, so there is hope against a bot like Martin. And now it is mate in 2 in various ways. He finds one of the ways and plays checkmate. Martin wins in 69 moves. These new chess bots make Martin look like a good player. And he is 3-0. And there's only 2 games left. Can Martin keep it up? He gets the black pieces once again. The coin flips are not really in his favor. But Robin plays a4, so it doesn't really matter. Martin responds with a5 and blunders a rook on move 4. It doesn't get taken. He blunders it again and again. And then Robin blocks the way to the rook. And blunders a knight, but saves it. And then out of nowhere, Robin loses her queen. Martin has a 6-point material advantage. But Martin being Martin, he's going to give some of that back, and he does. And he doesn't even take the knight back. He plays queen a6 and now knight to d3. Saves everything, or you can just move your king because the bishop now attacks the queen, so you have to save that instead of taking the knight. He plays king e1 and then doesn't save his queen. Now knight to g6 is the only winning move according to Stockfish. He does not, or rather, not Martin but White, she does not play that. Instead, playing bishop e2, not even taking the queen. E takes f4 is played, the queen is still hanging, and it's taken. And Martin takes the rook. I honestly didn't even see that that rook could be captured. And Martin doesn't save this bishop, although it was trapped oh no, it wasn't trapped. I was thinking of this. That would get the bishop trapped, but the bishop can just go back here. And Martin finally takes the bishop, and he's only up 3 points of material, and he blunders a knight. If d takes e5 is played, the game is equal, and it is played. Rook to g8, and now after c takes b6, White is winning because this pawn will be very difficult to stop. But that doesn't happen. Rook f8 is played, king g3, pawn takes pawn so that this c pawn is no longer a threat. There are still ways that a passed pawn could be created, like even if you just go here, and something like, well, not now, because this, but you could end up with the pawn being passed. Martin wins a bishop, and then Force blunders a rook back, so now it is Robin who is winning this game. And she can play rook takes g5 and start cleaning up, but she plays rook to g4, which looks like a human mouse slip. Martin plays bishop takes g4, his only move to get back in the game. Robin takes back, and it's a draw, but not for long, because Martin blunders his last remaining piece, and White plays pawn to e5. Bishop b4 is the top engine move because the knight here is now stuck. But it's much more human to play bishop takes e5. Martin, however, actually plays bishop b4, the best move. And then they start shuffling. Robin loses a pawn. Martin blunders one back. But it ends up being Martin who grabs another pawn here. Now there is a threat of knight to e4. Although you can still just play b2, because if White wins a bishop but Black makes a queen, that's definitely better for Black. And Martin just loses a bishop in one move, but he is still completely winning, if you can believe that. King f2. I don't know why Robin's not taking the pawns. I guess she's programmed not to. Now if knight takes b2 happened, the game would be a draw. But knight b6 instead, Martin finally makes a queen and blunders it right back. Robin doesn't take. And now I was going to say the shuffling begins, but instead Martin just blunders a queen. Amazingly, he is still completely winning if he plays pawn to h3, because he can make another queen and then blunder that queen. He does not play that. Now the king can get back over to where he can stop the pawn, but instead the king goes the wrong way. And now Black is winning here, but now White is winning. And then Black is winning again. And now it's a draw. And now Black is winning again, but he needs to push the pawn. And he does. And now they're shuffling, and h2 happens. I guess Martin ran out of things to do. And h1 queen. And now he plays queen to a8, forking White's last two remaining pieces that are not pawns. Then another fork, and another one. He doesn't even take the knight in the end, but he does now. He starts shuffling, and I thought the 50 move rule might come into play. This is one game where his endgame technique was infuriatingly bad. I don't know why he didn't take either of the pawns when he had so many opportunities to do so. I guess because he's programmed like that. But eventually, Martin plays queen takes g4. White is now left with just a king and a pawn. And after a whole lot of mindless shuffling, Martin loses one of his last two remaining pawns. And finally, on move 127, Martin plays queen takes a4. And then, I have a feeling Martin is going to blunder this queen at some point. I played this game out yesterday. I don't remember how it went. I really wish Martin would push the A pawn. I think he'll do that eventually. He came pretty close to the 50 move rule, I think. But he doesn't have to push the A pawn, because now it is mate in one no matter where The white king goes. Martin plays queen to b2 checkmate. He is now 4-0, and now he only has to defeat the Elsa bot. And Martin gets the white pieces and starts with the bird opening, f4. Elsa plays c5. And Martin brings out the queen as early as move 3 and blunders her on the very next move. It took Martin 4 moves to hang a queen. Is that a record? I don't know. But Martin moves the queen right back and also undevelops the knight. This one had the most absurd opening out of all 5 of these games. A lot of pieces are getting blundered back and forth, but Elsa is now up a pawn, but Martin is the one with the advantage. But he blows it by not playing actively. And they're still playing a lot of moves that make very little sense and accomplish next to nothing, which is why I'm just speeding through these moves. It's because nothing interesting is happening. That's a free bishop. Martin takes it and is now completely winning. Let's see if Martin has any technique this time. Elsa hangs a rook, which definitely helps. She has to take that queen back. She blunders a rook for a knight, just for good measure. And blunders a queen if Martin can find rook to g2. But I doubt Martin will play that. Yeah, he plays knight to b5, which is not bad. In a position like this, you can do basically anything because you're up 2 full rooks. And he can win a knight right here. He does. The queens are getting traded off. How will white convert without a queen and with black having only pawns and a king? What just happened? What do you mean the right-click shortcut is off? Anyway, white is just shuffling, but he does grab a pawn and another one and a third one. Black is down to 1 pawn left. Martin is pushing the h pawn, loses the f pawn, but that doesn't matter. He's also pushing the a pawn. Now he starts shuffling, but now a7, h8, rook, just for a laugh, I guess. And it's here, and literally, well, not literally every move, but close to every move is checkmate in 2. Knight h6 check is one of the easiest to find because it is a very forcing move. Black only has 1 legal response. And on move number 67, Martin plays his only checkmate in 1 move, which is rook f8 mate, and Martin sweeps the new to chess bots. Goodbye.